this is not hyperbole. The fact of the matter is that this president is more George Wallace than George Washington. So by that, he probably means that, his good friend George Wallace that he worked with on many great bills in the years. Like, it really rings hollow coming from Biden, and also a lot of these other people too, who have just proven to not be serious. They just don't care about like defending every member in the party, and they don't seem to be too aggravated either when Elon starts getting death threats. Like, there's been leaked text reports saying from senior Democratic aides, I hate that we have to defend her. Like, it's really, really concerning for where this goes. And I think if anything happens to these people, which I think it's only really, I hate to say this, but God forbid, obviously, a matter of time, I think, before something happens against one of these 4 freshman congresswomen, especially with the vitriol that they've been getting as of late. I think Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump are both in large parts to blame for the things that they've done. I think you gotta blame first, I think foremost, Donald Trump for this, but Nancy Pelosi, I think, can never be forgotten, should never be forgotten, and all the people who called Elon Omar anti-Semitic, took all these little shots, followed the right wing, and followed the insane pro-Israel lobby. I think they have to take that responsibility.
I mean, I would have to say that Nancy Pelosi, I don't think she's running for her life. I think what is going on here is a situation where she is in a bit of pressure from many of the more establishment people in the Democrat caucus right now. You look at the map for 2018. 33 out of the 40 seats were won by, with the moderate candidates in these flip districts. She would rather protect those people so that she could protect the House majority rather than the more progressives. That's what I'm noticing with her, with a lot of her things. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, look, they're probably going to get elected again in 2020. At least some of them are. Depends on really some of the primary challenges that some of these people are going to have. But it's going to be crucial because I think what is really interesting here is that a lot of the Trump voters in 2016 who had voted for Trump then went over to the Democrats in 2018 because in a lot of these districts, which were having a candidate on the Democrat ticket that they felt was, better than what they had offered in 2016, which was more kind of, we weren't really focusing on the House for some reason in 2016. I noticed the Democrat Party really wasn't, which is probably the reason why they did not gain the control of the House in 2016, even though they probably could have if they had focused on it more. But in 2018, a lot of these districts that had were flipped because a lot of the voters who had voted for Trump in 2016 were, in a way, kind of felt they were disavowed and, in a way, kind of lied to in many senses. And look, we had a lot of interesting wins this year. You look at Oklahoma's 5th, look at Kansas's 3rd, you look at New York's 11th. These are in Utah's 4th, excuse me. These are just some districts that I would have never imagined would have gone Democrat. They did in 2018. All the candidates who ran in those districts were not, very, very left candidates. And the fact of the matter is that the only 5 candidates who are actually pretty left is the Squad, and then there's a 5th person from California who had beat out I forgot her name. I think it's like Katie Holmes or something like that.
Katie Hill, yeah. There's a pretty insane story about her.
Katie Hill, yeah.
That I do want to get to. I was just remembering, I saw it on Twitter today. Like, there's people in the Democratic Party who are actively supporting Republicans to try to go after her. See if we can get to it a little bit later on the story. But, yeah, sorry to interrupt you if you still had some more things to say.
Oh, no, I mean, I was just, it was pretty much just like the fact that I think that she's trying to protect it. I mean, look, I understand what she's doing. Some of the stuff I don't agree with her. I'm not saying I'm not a protector of Pelosi at all. I'm not saying, everything she does is great. I'm not that, like, I'm not that connected to, like, being, like, laser vision, like, right behind her head, like, oh, yeah, whatever you do, Nancy, is great. Some of the things she's done is all right. Some of the things she's done is bad. Everyone has a bad and downside. I think Nancy Pelosi is a little bit kind of like, well, what the hell's going on in my party right now? And I feel like that is if she's kind of just doing stuff that, honestly, she probably isn't really thinking about before she says it in most circumstances. Not saying that she shouldn't be thinking about it beforehand. I feel as if that she's just, like, kind of a little bit in the matter right now, kind of crazy. I mean, look at the impeachment vote that happened a couple of days ago in the House, I think on Thursday. That failed pretty miserably. Only 95 Democrats have voted for that resolution. So, I mean, we definitely do see a bit of a division in the Democrat Party. And that's going to be a little bit, interesting to see what exactly happens in the 2020 House elections, because we're going to have to see who exactly wins, because, maybe a lot of these moderates who won in 2018, they might get kicked out. Who knows? I mean, the districts where they won in, they're pretty flipped. I mean, they're pretty swing, and they could easily flip. I mean, that's probably the only reason why they got in 2018 in most circumstances. Depends on really what they think of the House getting things done. In my opinion, they probably got a lot of stuff done. It's just the Senate, it's like a pretty much just a wall that they can't get past with Mitch McConnell in the Senate. But I mean, I do find that some people who definitely had voted Democrat are probably a little bit, a little bit upset that they haven't gotten a ginormous amount done, as they had basically kind of made it seem like they were going to get done. But they have gotten a good amount done, I would have to say, compared to what was done in the previous Congress when the Republicans held all three chambers.
There is really only so much that you can do.
Yeah, I mean,
one
look,
house.
the thing that's so funny though is that they complain that they didn't get health care passed. I literally say every time I hear them say, "Oh, we need health care passed." Well, you know what? You had 2 years. You had 2 years to do it. You had the presidency, you had the House, and you had the Senate. The Senate was probably the only problem, but the only thing you had to do is get Murkowski, Collins, and Rand Paul on your side, and then you could get that bill passed. That's all they needed to do. It really, I mean, honestly, that's really all they needed to do. Was it that hard? No. They made it harder than it should have been. In a way, it's kind of good that they didn't pass their.
Yeah, and we forget it was that close. That's so crazy. Yeah.
It's
all
really
down to
was
really John McCain, really. I think, right?
Yeah, John McCain as well. Yeah, he had blocked the amendment to do the full repeal without replace, because that was like their last step in the sense they did that in, I believe it was March or April of 2017. They did that, I believe. I know that he had passed on in 2018 of August. Oh, excuse me, probably 2018. They did it. I'm trying to remember exactly when they did it, but the only thing I know is that it was just like they were really close to pass the American Care Act, and they keep on complaining they don't have good health care. Well, they had 2 years to do it. They just chose to kind of sit back and relax and get paid the $174,000 salary, which they get paid, which is a little bit high for a job that for those last 2 years they kind of did little to nothing on many key American issues that I would have to say, which is part of the reason why Democrats actually got in it was health care. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, they were very successful. And what really does kind of bother me about this is because a lot of times the places where they won, they were not working class districts. The Democrats really need to do, in my opinion, to get back. If they want to form a majority that's going to last in a real true coalition, I think they need to really win back the working class with progressive policies that are actually going to make a difference in people's lives and actually have a real vision for the future. That's how they do it. I don't think they will be very successful if they go to the Whole Food areas, because that slightly worked in 2018. It failed pretty miserably in 2016. It's a very unreliable strategy. What really would be good is if you see kind of a real change in the way the Democratic Party talks about things and the way the Democratic Party kind of considers politics in general, which I think is going to be a very, very hard thing to achieve, but it's definitely something that's worth trying, something we really need to do, is just kind of looking towards more working class people and supporting, I think, more progressive candidates, because there's always assumed, oh yeah, the moderates win, and moderates will turn around and say, oh yeah, the moderates won all the races, right? But the DCCC gave them all the money and shut out all the progressives. So, how are you going to expect progressives to win if they have no money, no support, no media coverage? It's because the Democratic Party doesn't support them. And I think that's all kind of part of a huge change that we need to see happen in the Democratic Party. Just maybe we'll be a little bit more open to progressive candidates. It would be really nice to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I honor your opinion completely. I mean, my personal opinion on the matter of how Democrats are going to keep on the House majority in the future is, I mean, the strategy that they have now, in my opinion, it works in certain circumstances. 2016, they didn't really put a lot of laser focus as their GOP had on the House, Senate, and the presidency. And what I think is going to be really crucial in 2020 for them to do in the House, and honestly probably the Senate as well, is to try to connect as well to these voters who actually voted for Democrats in the past, but then for some reason said, gee, you know what, let me try Trump in 2016. These are the voters that still register as Democrats, but in 2016 they decided to change. it's not as if like these are Republicans who voted for Trump and are like, oh, let me just vote Democrat now. Yes, there are some of them obviously doing that, but it's also we always let out the independents. Independents are typically people who consider themselves moderate, or a lot of circumstances in certain states, like Texas, for example, is actually interesting because the majority of the independents there vote more conservatively, which is why Texas still is a tilt red state, even though there are more Democrats registered than Republicans in that state as of 2018, which is very interesting. But the independents are, I mean, they're going to be really kind of, I think, the swing vote. I think they're going to be deciding vote as they were in 2018 and 2016. And I think what they're going to need to kind of be seeing is, I mean, yeah, I see this a little bit of the progressive tide in 2018. But the problem with that is that you have to look at who is exactly voting for them. I've looked at certain areas, and as well, this might shock many people, but this is probably going to shock a lot of people. But guess who's voting for the majority of the progressives? A lot of rich Democrats. You still have a lot of the working class people who are saying, I don't like this idea of some of these systems that the progressives are putting up. And that is actually exactly what happened with Katie Hill in her primary. I mean, Katie Hill won her primary, but her closest opponent, which wasn't that far away from her in the primary, she had the support of more of the working class community in her congressional district, which actually, shockingly enough, actually voted for her Republican opponent 4 years back when she was actually getting elected in 2014, when she actually had a little bit of a campaign finance issue. The Republican, I'm trying to remember her name already. I forgot her name, but she had a campaign finance problem where she actually wasn't getting a lot of money from the Republican National Committee, similar to what happened with that person out in Nebraska. Nebraska's, I think it was first or second district. It was Lara Eastman. She had beat out the former Representative Brad Ashford. Personally, I probably would have rather had Brad Ashford. I think he probably could have won that Nebraska district back again from Don Bacon.
Oh yes, Kara Eastman. Yeah, Kara Eastman. Like, yeah, I thought, she was one of my perfect point that I was making before. Like, she was a pretty strong, like, she had the support of, I think, a lot of Nebraskans there, but just did not have enough support from Democrats, because people, like, it's been happening, I think, really since 2006. Like, we had people like Rahm Emanuel turning their backs and saying, oh no, I don't think the progressives can win here because it's just not popular enough, whatever. Like, giving those ideas, I think, a chance and actually giving them a real chance to thrive. It's going to be very unlikely, but I think it would really do wonders, at least, to prove some of the kind of the progressive ideals here.
I mean, yeah, I do see the point. I think what Democrats are also going to have to look at here is really, I mean, look, personally for me, my personal views in some circumstances, if I were to run for an office, I mean, look, I do consider myself more of a problem solver. I don't like to play political games. I don't like to, let's just play some like roulette and do nothing all day, which is, I feel like, what's going on in DC lately. And, I feel as if, look, the idea of some of these progressive ideas, as much as they sound pretty nice and everything, I mean, look, I would love to have free college. I would love to have an idea of, a job given to me by the government. But the problem with that is that many of the working class people who actually had voted for more of the establishment candidates, the reason why is that they said that, look, at least this was a circumstance from a news interview that had occurred out in California's 49th, I think, congressional district, where the Democrat had beat the Korean female Republican candidate. I forgot her name already, but that was a close race. I think it was the 49th congressional district, if I'm correct. Gil Cisneros, that's who the representative is now. And it was funny because they actually did an interview, because they actually did a recount of that election, and many of the absentee ballots were then mailed in a little bit later, which is why that race wasn't decided until 2 weeks after the election had actually occurred. And funny enough, a lot of those people in that district had voted for him in the primary over the more progressive candidate who had also ran in 2016 but did not successfully get the Democrat nomination for that congressional seat in 2016.
And that's like Orange County area, right?
Yeah, that's Orange. That's
kind of, I think, a more like
historically
wealthier area.
Yeah, well, I mean, but there is some part of it a little bit low on its luck. In the southwestern part of the congressional district, it's not far from I think that's 47th congressional district